It is Friday, and we are working for Crusoe. Friday, August 15th, 2025. In Los Angeles, he is Sam Park. In Reno, Nevada, I am John Ramey. And full disclosure, we are actually recording on the evening of Thursday, August 14th. We will talk about the impending summit in Alaska between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. We will talk about the anniversary, the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Japan. But we will start with the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the change at the top of that governmental department. Fox Business News reporting, E.J. Antoni, the economist tapped by President Donald Trump to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics, suggested suspending the agency's closely watched monthly jobs report, featured prominently in last week's Working for Crusoe, arguing its underlying methodology, economic modeling, and statistical assumptions are fundamentally flawed. In an August 4th interview with Fox News Digital, ahead of the nomination announcement, Antoni criticized the data behind the monthly jobs report as unreliable and frequently overstated, warning that it misleads key economic decision makers from Washington to Wall Street. Sam, you forwarded me a piece by Paul Krugman, the former New York Times writer, the esteemed economist.
Nobel laureate economist.
Yes, Nobel laureate. Yeah, I guess esteemed. You can be a little more specific, Ramey. Nobel laureate. And he pointed to some of his colleagues' outstanding work that really paints us a clear picture of E.J. Antoni as a boob and a moron. And he cited Stephen Moore, a man I regrettably booked many times on the Jim Bohannon show, as a similar. That. Oh yes, against my will.
So
my job,
it doesn't
not my
surprise
mission.
me, but I didn't know.
Yeah, and Stephen Moore is a sloppy partisan hack and a bit of a boob and a moron. And so E.J. Antoni is just kind of the 37-year-old version in what is an established line of partisan hackery in economics. Look, it happens. But
let the word go forth to Fred and Phil alike that the torch has been passed.
The torch has been passed to a generation of partisan hacks within economics. Antoni is the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a one-time reputable think tank, conservative think tank, turned into some sort of nightmare MAGA pseudo-intellectual cabal. Is that a fair characterization?
I think that's very fair. They're, in fact, the organization behind Project 2025, which appears to be being executed with dispatch every single day.
I mean, this move to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and to put in somebody who is roundly thought to be by objective and qualified people as unqualified and clearly just a loyalist is alarming, to say the least.
I would say so. I mean, this development occurred or began to occur just on the heels of our recording our last episode, which is actually 2 weeks ago, John. This was not last
Excuse me. Yes,
episode.
you've been on a holiday. Excuse me.
That's right.
Last episode.
But yes, we discussed the July jobs report on August 1st, which is when that report came out. And it was a weak jobs report of about 73,000 jobs added in July, as I recall. But the main takeaway from that news item was the dramatic revision of the previous 2 months' job totals down by 6 figures or so.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That is more than 100,000 in each month. And this occasioned, after we recorded our last episode, in President Trump firing the previous head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McIntyre, whose name I had never heard before because you're not supposed to, right? The head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's not a political
position.
That's right. It's supposed to be an invisible career civil servant who just, people said it's not even like firing the referee. It's like firing the scoreboard operator, right?
Yeah.
She actually doesn't have any business in compiling the jobs totals at all. She's in fact not supposed to do that. So
she just presents them for us to consume.
That's right.
Presents the data for us to consume in a convenient manner.
And so this puts people like us in sort of an awkward spot because it's widely anticipated, or perhaps what not widely enough, but widely anticipated that Antony or Antony, I'm not sure exactly how his name is pronounced, but that he will just sort of, provide whatever data he thinks the president wants to hear, if he continues to provide the data at all. For instance, as you mentioned, that he might not even come up with monthly jobs reports
Monthly, right?
anymore, right? Perhaps we'll move to a quarterly system. Now, the thing that surprises me a little bit about this is that investors don't seem to care, right? Now,
It is interesting. I've not heard the outcry from the private sector on this.
that's right. In fact, the investors reacted a little bit to the inflation numbers that came out today and the other inflation numbers that came out a day or two ago. But they didn't seem to be concerned at all that they are not going to be provided with timely data. Now, in some cases, that might be because if you're, I don't know, JP Morgan Chase or Goldman Sachs or TIAA CREF or something like, a large financial firm of any kind, you have economists, right? They're looking at stuff all the time, right?
But Sam, surely their net cannot be as broad as the U.S. government. They can't be getting that much data
I would
to
agree
compete
with
with
that,
that.
right? I mean, in fact, I would think that, but the problem is that all these firms, the economists don't work on the trading desks, right? They might be saying, hey guys, going down the hall and saying, hey guys, what data is it that you think we're looking at? Right? We're not actually going out there, and gathering data ourselves. We need the BLS data
Yeah.
in order to do our jobs, right? But again, they're not doing the trading. And so that,
Sam, it just speaks to something you spoke about in earlier episodes that the United States economy, in addition to being the largest economy and the most prosperous economy, is the most diverse economy. So you
yes.
can have, an army of economists working for various investment firms, but just the nature of those positions will not have the breadth of scope that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has to get a holistic picture of the uniquely diverse American economy.
One would think they don't, right? I mean, that would make
Yeah.
sense to me. But again, the
I
people
mean, that would
doing
just be inefficient for them to have that operation today.
again, one would assume that to be the case, but it doesn't seem to have filtered down to the people doing the actual trading of financial securities. And I don't really understand why that is. But I think as time goes on, for instance, we just got, as I mentioned, we just got CPI, that is the Consumer Price Index data the other day. We got Producer Price Index data today. Obviously, Mr. Antony has not yet had time to, settle into his office and monkey with any data thus far. So we can assume that the data for CPI and PPI that we just got is, sort of a holdover from the previous regime. But this puts people like us in an awkward position. What are we supposed to make of any subsequent data that we get? And so I don't know exactly how to answer that question. But while we're on the subject, consumer prices seem to hold relatively steady at about 2.7% inflation in July. But today's producer price index data was up by 0.9% for the month. That is
Hmm.
not the 2.7% annualized CPI number, but just in July, producer prices rose by almost 1%.
So
Now,
if you can extrapolate that to 12% annually.
well, I wouldn't quite put it but the
Okay,
point
that's
is,
a little bit like you hit a home run on opening day and you're on pace
yeah,
for. Okay,
that's right. All right.
but I get it. I get it.
All
It's
right.
still a big number.
It's a big number. But part of that, I think, is that, as we'll recall, just after Liberation Day, there was a 90-day pause instituted for what were called the reciprocal tariffs in April, right? And so that became the beginning of July for the deadline for that. And then that was extended by an additional 30 days to August 1st. So everybody knew that August 1st was the new deadline, right? So if you're importing anything at all, you're trying to get ahead of that deadline. So that
Right.
might explain the sort of spike in produce, or at least partly explain the spike in producer prices during the month of July. But it's still a rather alarmingly large number. And in fact, investors did react to that number. They pulled back at the beginning of the trading day today, although those losses were largely clawed back by the end of the day. But we don't know how valid any of the subsequent data we're going to get are going to be. And so I don't know what we're going to be able to say about any of that.
Here,
But
I'll go one better for you on that, Sam. Uh, what's the Fed supposed to do?
that's an excellent question. The other day,
Because this is advocating for the Fed to do stuff is kind of a norm that Trump has shattered, right? The
yes,
the independence of the central bank. Well, what if they don't have reliable data? How are they supposed to cut rates, for example,
that's an
which
excellent
he is
question.
always hectoring them to do?
Well, I mean, the idea I think would be is once the Chairman Powell at the Federal Reserve is replaced, he'll just be sort of the Fed version of Anthony, right? He'll just do whatever Trump wants. Right now, I
Wouldn't
think
foreign investment flee the United States like an outbreak of the plague if that happens?
one might think it would. But again, it's, I think, useful to recall exactly how strong the United States
Right.
economy actually is, right? Yes, up to a certain point, foreign investment will flee the United States. And by the way, that's kind of happening anyway. Uh,
Sure.
but the,
You
the
can't
fact
blame them.
but the fact is, everybody understands that the underlying condition of the United States economy is always strong. All right. You
Right.
can knock it down here and there for a limited time, but it will always come back just because it's so large and so
Right.
dynamic and so
And
diverse.
diverse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we don't exactly know how this is all going to work out. But right now, for instance, these large revisions that happened in the July, or that is the May and June jobs numbers, many economists will tell you that this is the sort of thing that happens when the economy is at a transitional point, right?
Mm.
Because you can't really, you can't, that is, if the trend begins to reverse, right? That's when you see large scale revisions of that nature. That doesn't mean that the economy is necessarily at one of those points. It's just that when it is at such a point, those sorts of revisions do occur.
Yeah. It will be interesting how we report on, job statistics and other economic data coming from the federal government going forward, but it will be also interesting to see how kind of legacy and established economic news sources treat it. Because,
Yes.
I mean, if just like reporting 101, if a stooge or a loyalist or an otherwise political appointee has been appointed to a non-political technocratic position, like you kind of have to disclose that in your reporting.
Yes, I would
Like
imagine
just
that.
basic journalism.
Yes, and I think we can be certain that E.J. Anthony will be the most famous head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics of all time,
Did
right?
you see he was wearing a double-breasted waistcoat
I did
under his
notice that.
sport coat when he
Yes.
posed with the president?
Yes. He looks
It's
like
just
a sort of a
like a robber. He's a
caricature
wannabe robber baron.
or a riverboat gambler from like a bad, Western
Yes.
made in the
Yeah.
1960s.
Yeah. Yeah. Just what you want as the head of Bureau of Labor
Yeah, I mean, we
Statistics.
might as well get, but of course, this is just sort of on par with the entire sort of tenor of the Trump administration. And it
That's
speaks
right.
to a sort of cultural anti-intellectualism that we've discussed on our show before, right? It's almost as if the entire message of this administration is we don't want to be people who know things. We just want to be people who do things.
And
And
have
that's
money.
Yes, and now perhaps that's just me reading into this, and yeah, I'm willing to cop to that if that ends up being the case.
But
But
Sam, it's not just this government, it's the whole ethic behind the championing of AI, for example. These are people that want to reap the benefits of intellectual rigor without any of the work. I mean, it's
that's
the
right.
same thing.
I agree
It's the
with
same
that.
thing.
All
Yeah.
right. And so Antony will not be able to escape public scrutiny in the way that any of his predecessors have.
Or ridicule. Okay. Speaking of ridiculous, Vladimir Putin, a war criminal, is visiting the United States, scheduled for tomorrow, Friday, as we will publish this on Friday the 15th. We are, as we mentioned, recording Thursday evening, the 14th. NBC News, Russia's Vladimir Putin sounded positive Thursday on the eve of his talks with President Donald Trump in Alaska, saying he believed the American leader was making, quote, quite energetic and sincere efforts toward peace in Ukraine. A day ahead of their summit, Putin convened a meeting of advisors to inform them, quote, about how the negotiation process on the Ukrainian crisis is going, the Kremlin said in a readout translated by NBC News. The Russian leader said the Trump administration is making the energetic and sincere efforts to stop the crisis and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict, end of quote. Those efforts are intended, quote, to create long-term conditions of peace between our countries and in Europe and in the world as a whole, he added, Putin, particularly if the negotiations are extended to cover strategic offensive weapons treaties. This was a bit of a twist. NBC saying this suggests that a deal on nuclear arms control could be part of the talks. Russia, of course, the of course is me, not NBC. Russia suspended its participation in the new START reduction in strategic offensive arms agreement 2 years ago in 2023. Now, look, if Donald Trump ends the war in Ukraine, that somehow is acceptable to both Zelensky and Europe and also Putin, and he gets the Russians to re-engage in strategic nuclear weapons limits
That would be
and treaties,
great.
listen, I will hand it to Donald Trump.
Sure.
I mean, that would be a towering accomplishment of foreign policy.
Yes. Now, John, do you expect either of those things to occur tomorrow?
No.
Okay. Now, I thought it was interesting
I
that
hope I'm wrong. Hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too. I thought it was interesting that it was the Russians who talked about sort of broadening the aperture of the scope of
Yes.
this meeting, right? And I think that they're not sort of being very subtle about this. And I think that might speak to the tactic that President Putin will employ tomorrow. In other words, he could just sort of, flatter Donald Trump, maybe, give him something made of gold or, I don't know. But say, look, Ukraine, it's really just small potatoes. You and me, we've got bigger things to think about.
Right.
Right. And
We run the world.
That's
We're
right.
the great powers.
That's right. And so let's see if we can work on those things. And if you need a ceasefire in order to get that to happen, I guess that's okay. But really, is that what you want to talk about with me here today? I mean, and so now that's just my kind of
Yeah, but
artist
that's
rendering
exactly.
of.
But I think it's. I think that's probably how it's going to go.
That's right. And if, people don't like my artist renderings of things, then they should probably switch to a different podcast.
Yeah.
But, and so that's kind of the way I expect this to play out. But I should say also that Trump himself has been all over the map in trying to
Yes.
manage expectations about this meeting, right?
Yeah, he's gone grandiose, and then he's lowered the bar, and then he's kind of tacked back.
Yeah, he goes back and forth. It's going to be amazing, or it's going to be bad, or or it won't amount to very much.
I'll know in 2 minutes. I might tell him good luck and leave.
That's right. And so meanwhile, the leaders of European nations, along with Ukrainian President Zelensky, have been sort of trying to gang up on him and surround him during the preparations for this meeting all week long. They've had calls with him. That is,
Him being Zelensky.
Yeah, so, but with Trump, right? With
right.
Zelensky and Trump and various European leaders, all in the same call. And without Trump, both before and after that call. All right. And so they're trying to sort of, explain to him what their priorities are and to do their best to make sure he understands what those priorities are. We don't know if he does or does not understand these things, but they have to do their very best to try and cultivate that understanding. And so, uh, and they've worked very hard to do this. Meanwhile, I think Germany and one or two Nordic countries have pledged additional arms sales to, or that is military assistance to Ukraine during this week-long lead up to this call. So they're also signaling, look, we're in, right? Now, if you're gonna cut Ukraine loose, that's on you, right? We're gonna keep carrying the ball on this, and so now I guess if Trump pulled out, they might think differently of that, but they're at least trying to send that signal to him.
In the annals of shame regarding the Trump presidencies, where does allowing a war criminal a photo op and a summit on U.S. soil rank? I mean, I know the U.S. isn't party to the International Criminal Courts.
No, we're not.
Which is its own. That's another podcast. But
Certainly, yes.
but I mean, Putin's a war criminal, and
No,
this
he's
is
not
kind of.
he's an indicted war. He's been
Okay.
indicted on war crimes. He has not been
You know what?
found.
Thank you for correcting me on that. Excuse me. So he's an indicted war. Well, I guess it's like Trump. He's an adjudicated rapist, right?
Sure,
Well, no,
exactly.
no. Trump's adjudicated, not just indicted. But
That's right.
the point is, like, this allows Putin. I mean, there's some Russian media talking about this. Like, they tried to isolate us, but we're back on the world stage. We're meeting with the president. We're in the United States. I mean, this feeds the Russian narrative that they're actually still a relevant great power just
Certainly,
by
yes.
having this meeting at all.
Absolutely.
And I guess how shameful does that seem to you? And B, like, just by having the meeting, hasn't the U.S. kind of already lost?
Well, I wouldn't say already lost necessarily, but it's certainly shameful. There's no question about it. Also, we should add that Alaska, where this meeting is taking place,
Yes.
was purchased from Russia by the United States in, I believe, 1867. I saw a little factoid on the PBS NewsHour just this evening that the $7 or so million that was the purchase price of Alaska is now about 130 million. And
Still a bargain.
oh, that's a steal. Are you kidding me? I mean, and there are Russian propagandists to this day who talk about getting it back. Now, of course, that's not going to happen. But I mean, yeah, the entire thing is a disgrace, as you say. There's no two ways about it. But of course, Trump he wants to meet face to face with Putin, right? This is, in his mind, he's achieving a goal of his.
Is this
right?
just part of his imperial pantomime?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, entirely. Right. It's,
The Potemkin presidency?
yes. And this is why, another reason that is why I think Putin will attempt to flatter him
Sure.
as a peer-to-peer meeting between the leaders of two great powers. Because he knows that's the way Trump sees it.
But I'm not going to speculate about what I think could happen because we just have to wait and see. This isn't going to last more than a day, right?
Not that we don't believe it will, but Trump has said within the past day or two that if the meeting goes well, he would consider summoning Volodymyr Zelensky to Alaska to continue the meeting on a trilateral basis. Now, I don't expect that to happen, but I can't say that it won't. The reason I don't think it will, though, is that it's not in Putin's direct interest for that to happen, and I don't think Trump will insist on it.
Right. Because Putin wants to give him some sort of fake good result.
That's
And
right.
if Zelensky comes there to make a deal, that's going to result in a real result.
That's
Or-
right. And
or Putin backing out of his fake commitment.
That's right. And I don't think that Zelensky would agree to go if an immediate ceasefire is not seen to be on the table. And
I mean, if I'm
it's-
Zelensky, why would I go anywhere Trump is ever?
well,
ever
I
again.
mean, you might have to here
I
and
guess
there,
if you
right?
can end the war. Yeah.
That's right, right. And so but it's in Putin's interest, at least as I define those interests, to forestall a ceasefire as long as he possibly can, right? He wants to keep on pushing for territory. They're making at least modest gains in recent days.
Yeah, they had a
Uh,
breakthrough.
yeah, it's debatable exactly how large that breakthrough was, but it was a real territorial gain, that, however large or small. And so uh, I think Putin's idea is just to string this out as long as possible, right? But even whether or not there's a ceasefire, it's on some level a win-win scenario for Putin, right? He's losing God knows how many men, right?
Mhm.
All the time. He's just
Hundreds of
throwing,
thousands have died in this conflict.
he's just throwing men in there every day. And so, if that's not something that he can sustain forever. And so if he can give himself a little bit of break on that, he can, sort of regroup and help himself out a little bit, or he gets to go on, right? He doesn't need a ceasefire as much as Ukraine does,
But
but
he could use one.
a ceasefire wouldn't hurt him at all. So
Right.
I don't think that he would agree to one right away, but he wouldn't say no to one if it was insisted upon. I just don't think it will be.
Is a
But
ceasefire, but I mean, doesn't a ceasefire just give Russia more time to dust itself off and make ready another more vicious series of attacks?
oh yes, it does certainly. But for instance,
I mean, I
in
understand Ukrainians don't want to get bombed every day, but
that's right, and
it
that's
might
the,
end up
but I
benefiting
think
Russia more.
But that's the calculus that's operating in Ukraine right now,
Hmm.
right? For
Right.
instance, at the beginning of the war, overwhelming Ukrainian public opinion was fight on, fight, fight, fight. It's not like that today. Those numbers
Sure.
have pretty much exactly reversed. It's about 70% in favor of an immediate ceasefire, just because they're getting hammered all over I mean, the Russian attacks in the past couple of months have been the largest of the war thus far, and that's 3 years. 3 years, John.
It's incredible. One note: have you been to Anchorage, Alaska, Sam?
I've never been to Alaska at all, actually.
I believe this is taking place in Anchorage, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I have. I have covered the Great Alaska Shootout, the traditional, long-held uh, non-conference season basketball tournament,
Oh,
and
that must be fun.
it is great. Anchorage is a great town, and I sincerely hope that members of both delegations can make their way to the Captain Cook Hotel.
Well, in fact, I heard a sort of peripheral story about this that the
The
Russians have,
450
yeah,
visas. Yeah.
450.
Yeah.
They want to bring 450 people to
To
this country,
Anchorage,
this
Alaska.
meeting, a 1 day meeting. They need 450 people. I mean, please, right? I hope that I really am curious to see what the final tally ends up being. So, but the point being, John,
It's
is that
beautiful there. I hope they enjoy it.
okay? But I don't care how nice that hotel is. Can they really handle 450? I mean, it's got to be their peak tourist season right now.
I mean, that and the Great Alaska Shootout. Yeah. 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 Okay. Well, next week, what a great tease just for us to debrief
That's
the
right. Well, yeah,
Alaska,
we'll be
the
discussing this more
Anchorage, the
in
Anchorage
next
Summit.
week in next week's episode, certainly.
Who, Michelle Shocked has a song about Anchorage, Alaska. Is that right?
If you say so.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I got, on the summit. Last week we had the week off, the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, were observed last week. And those events are, I kind of realized, are still at the beating heart of the point of this podcast in a real way.
Very much so, yes.
And, I have gone on and on for years on this podcast about how shameful the American abdication of moral leadership in the world, for example, not being full-throated in their defense of Ukraine against territorial annexation by Russia. Um, how we're not dealing with the catastrophe in Gaza. I mean, you can just go right down the list, right? We are, according to very smart people whose scholarship it is to describe this kind of thing. We're now in kind of the post Pax Americana, the post end of the Cold War American hegemonic leadership in the world. And that dates back to the end of World War II.
Yes.
And there was a time from August 6th, 1945, until the Soviet Union successfully tested their first atomic weapon 4 years later in 1949, where the United States and the people who died in Japan uh, had this horrible collaboration where they were able to demonstrate to the world just how unthinkable great power total war had become due to technology. And I have to admit, I have failed to think about how disrespectful, how shameful it is, the American abdication of moral leadership in the world to the Japanese who suffered during those bombings, right? It's not just America should be better than this, but it also ignores the suffering of the Japanese people that they did on behalf of the rest of the world to make sure those weapons wouldn't be used for another 80 years.
And I think that's very spot on. In fact, some of the most eloquent testimony that we saw during the anniversary was from the very small number of survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Uh, uh, and I think that in our experience as Americans, those voices are seldom heard,
Yeah,
at least in that I've experienced. And I think it took something like the 80th anniversary to, however inadequately, remedy that lack, uh, because uh, th these people are, very old, and they're not going to be around much longer to be able to talk about this. And so it's well past time that we did hear from them, and this could be one of our final opportunities to do so. And But as you say, for instance, we just had the United States drop an enormous amount of explosives on Iran to stop them from having nuclear weapons, right? From the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine that we've
right.
just been discussing, right? There's been the specter of the Russian nuclear arsenal. The entire bilateral conflict that we have with China is a conflict between two nuclear powers. A few months ago, there was a border conflict between India and
Right.
Pakistan, right? Again, two nuclear powers. Now, it does seem, however, on some level, that nuclear mutual deterrence works, right?
Well, it has for 80 years, thanks in
That's
no
right.
small part to the suffering of the Japanese people. And
Yes.
that's what I really feel like I am happy to talk about with anybody, what the morality or the justifications of the atomic bombings. But the fact of the matter is they happened, and the whole world for the last 80 years has held on to the idea that Jesus Christ, that's a bad outcome. World War
Yes.
II was bad, and the only way it stopped was the worst thing ever. And the suffering of the Japanese people was essential to that terrible lesson. And so every time the United States now makes these feckless foreign policy decisions, I I feel that we can center the Japanese suffering a little bit more in that conversation. Because
Uh,
for me, it's been a bit of a jingoistic thing. Like, we're America, we're supposed to do the right thing, we're supposed to be the good guys, and we can even step away from that and just think about what those people went through in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so that we could have great power peace the last 80 years.
Yes, but I think as I was mentioning before, part of the reason is for that sort of lacuna is that uh, no one in the United States really gave a lot of thought to listening to the experience of those Japanese survivors until just now. It was, I don't want to say consciously, but uh, almost as if by tacit agreement, excluded from the narrative for whatever reason, which I'm sure were a large number of reasons, and perhaps not all even uh, conscious reasons
Sure.
necessarily. But
And
that's
maybe
just
not
sort of
all of them in bad faith.
that's right.
Yeah.
Some of them, however, might have been in bad faith.
Sure.
But
Sure.
while we're sort of kind of wrapping all these things together, I think it's important to realize that the amount of ordnance that Israel has dropped on Gaza in the past 2.5 years, it's more than Hiroshima, right? And I think by a distance.
Yes.
And if you think about the small size of the area of Gaza, uh, just because it's not nuclear doesn't mean it's not horrendous. And we are going to need to start thinking about these things in, I think, more visceral or explicit terms than we
Right.
have been, because these things are. You don't need to have nuclear weapons to kill lots of people, and uh, people are dying all the time, right? We haven't talked about Sudan in a while, but that
Oh
situation
man.
is still the world's worst humanitarian crisis and getting worse right now, as it has been periodically throughout that war, which is now 2.5 years also. And so, uh, and this just brings into sharper relief the point you were making about the abdication of American leadership.
Yeah. Again, it often just has come from my, patriotic sense of we're supposed to be doing the right things, but also by doing the right things, you alleviate human suffering on a mass scale. And the United States doesn't seem to be particularly interested in avoiding or ending or limiting human suffering on a mass scale.
In some cases, it seems to be interested in allowing that suffering to continue as a positive good.
Yeah,
Again, that's just my artist's rendering of the
sure.
situation.
But it's hard to not draw that conclusion.
It's
Right.
based on facts and evidence.
Yeah. And so with the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings passing last week, I'm glad we got to reflect on that. All right. Next
As am
week,
I.
we'll talk about Sudan and whatever else comes down the pike. But have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks, folks.